Venezuelan state TV has been showcasing the country's military might on repeat.
De hacer un ejercicio de defensa de costa.
On the streets, the government is pushing a recruitment drive. For weeks, events known as Militia Saturdays enlist and train everyday Venezuelans.
Pelotón relámpago, activo porque vamos al objetivo. Aquí el objetivo primordial es no morir.
This is the Venezuelan Bolivarian Militia, a civilian reserve force. Captain Rafael Astudillo is a construction teacher who's been a member of the militia for 22 years.
Simplemente lo que queremos es que la persona sepa qué es un armamento, le pierda el miedo al armamento y porque en cualquier momento va a tener que utilizarlo, pues.
He says there has been a surge in sign-ups after calls from the country's leader, Nicolás Maduro.
Pueblo de los Estados Unidos lo sabe. Se están inventando una nueva guerra eterna. Prometieron que más nunca se metían en una guerra. Y se están inventando una guerra que nosotros vamos a evitar.
US President Donald Trump has declared war on the drug trade, accusing Venezuela of being a key source of narcotics. Over the past 2 months, the US has blown up at least 14 vessels in the Caribbean Sea and Pacific Ocean, alleging they were drug trafficking. At least 57 people have been killed.
I think we're just going to kill people that are bringing drugs into our country, okay? We're going to kill them, you know? They're going to be like dead, okay?
The US has provided no evidence that these boats were carrying narcotics and scant detail on those killed.
These are not armed actors that represent an immediate threat, which is a necessary threshold to argue for killing people in a theater of war. And this is not a theater of war. These are international waters in which it's occurring.
The US has been increasingly exerting its military prowess in the region, conducting training exercises and moving its forces. It's estimated up to 14% of the US Navy fleet is operating in the Caribbean, with 10,000 troops deployed. Last week, the President ordered the USS Gerald R. Ford, the world's largest aircraft carrier, to reposition from the Mediterranean to the Caribbean.
The military presence is evidently far beyond what you could possibly need for striking a few boats carrying drugs across the Caribbean.
Phil Gunson is an Andes region senior analyst for the International Crisis Group and lives in Venezuela.
On the face of it, this massive military buildup in the southern Caribbean is all to do with an anti-drugs operation. But of course, behind it, what the ultimate goal is to get rid of Maduro, in other words, regime change.
Does the CIA have authority to take out Maduro?
Oh, I don't want to answer a question like that. That's a ridiculous question for me to be given. Not really a ridiculous question, but wouldn't it be a ridiculous question for me to answer?
While Venezuelans publicly back Nicolás Maduro, many support regime change. Under Maduro's leadership, Venezuela has suffered a prolonged economic and humanitarian crisis, and dissent has been crushed in brutal and sometimes deadly ways. Opposition leader Maria Corina Machado won the 2025 Nobel Peace Prize for her work promoting democratic rights for Venezuela. She was banned from contesting last year's presidential election, which was widely perceived as rigged.
Venezuelans clearly want change, and they demonstrated that in the election of July last year. Maybe 80% of Venezuelans want to see the back of the present government. That's not to say that all of them, of course, want to see it happen through military intervention.
Machado says her opposition party has a 100-hour plan for an orderly transition should Nicolás Maduro go.
You could topple Maduro fairly easily, but the problem then becomes, what do you do after that? How do you guarantee internal security? How do you make sure that the government that you've installed doesn't immediately fall? Because there are many people with guns in Venezuela, including parts of the armed forces, that would be obviously hostile to the replacement of the government.
The Trump administration has put out a $50 million bounty for Nicolas Maduro's arrest, but so far that hasn't been enough to encourage a military or a people terrified into loyalty to betray him. The US continues to ramp up pressure, with Donald Trump indicating land targets could be next in his war on drugs.
I can tell you one thing, we stopped all drugs virtually from coming in by sea. And we'll stop all drugs from coming in by land very shortly. You'll see that starting.
All of this is seen as largely performative. Few believe the US president, who campaigned against entrenching America in other people's wars and vowed to end international conflicts, is committed to a full military invasion. Instead, it's seen as saber-rattling, an attempt to persuade those around Maduro to give him up.
It's a terribly risky policy unless he's willing to commit all the way. And quite frankly, given his commitment, and I think it's actually genuinely felt, to avoid putting U.S. soldiers' lives at risk, this could reach a point where he says, we just can't go that far, we can't do it. And then he will end up leaving a Maduro who's much stronger than when he was, let's say, 2 months ago.